Four Spheres of Knowledge Creation. The Causal Principles by René Holmbjerg Bøtker. Chapter 11. Sets. When multiple actualized objects share a boundary, they form a composite with an outer boundary. The area, which is delineated by the outer boundary, is known as a set. A set is a composite and subdivisible into multiple actualized objects. The actualized objects constitute the set and structures its composition. A set is an analog representation of phenomenal representations of the actualized objects, which constitutes the set. The phenomenal representations of the actualized objects constitute the boundaries of the set. A set consists only of actualized objects, which are a particular representation of noumenal property. A set is therefore not an analog representation of the noumenal property, which the phenomenal representations of the actualized objects in the set are an analog of. Although it is not a representation of noumenal property, the phenomenal world is subject to the pre-established harmony, which allows actualized objects to position themselves among each other and differentiate themselves through delineation. The shared boundaries of a set is therefore subject to the pre-established harmony, as it facilitates the positioning of objects relative to each other by enabling a shared boundary. A shared boundary is the expression of an object subjected to the perception from another object. The pre-established harmony represents all shared boundaries of the phenomenal world. The pre-established harmony determines every position and delineation that an actualized object can have. When an actualized phenomenal object is expressing all possible expressions or perceiving all possible perceptions, it is representing its position and delineation in the pre-established harmony. The shared boundary represents the actualization process, where an object is actualized as an object capable of expressing and perceiving property. The shared boundary facilitates interaction by enabling one object to perceive the expression of an object with which it shares a boundary. An object cannot share a boundary nor interact with another object that is not facilitated by the pre-established harmony. A set is a representation of actualized objects positioned among each other as a representation of their position in the pre-established harmony. The shared boundaries, which exist in a set, is a phenomenal representation of the shared boundaries in the noumenal pre-established harmony. Infinite and finite sets. If the set includes all actualized objects in existence, it is known as an infinite set. An infinite set is the entire phenomenal dimension composed of an infinity of actualized objects. The expression or perception of any actualized object in an infinite set is subjected to the perception or expression from an infinity of actualized objects, and therefore includes all possible representations. An infinite set establishes the pre-established harmony phenomenally as an analog to the noumenal world. Therefore, an actualized object in an infinite set is an analog to a noumenal potential object. An infinite set does not have an outer boundary as such. The outer boundary of an infinite set is a pseudo-boundary, as it is not constituted by any actualized objects. It is always open to actualization. The outer boundary of an infinite set is constituted as the whole, which is always contingent. The boundaries that exist in an infinite set are all shared by the infinite number of actualized objects, which composes the set. All boundaries in an infinite set are therefore boundaries between objects. A set that is a subset of an infinite set is a finite set. A finite set is a subset of the objects, which exists in an infinite set. As a set consists of actualized objects, the infinite divisibility of the noumenal world does not exist in a finite set. The finite set can therefore not contain infinite subsets. The expression of any object in a finite set is subjected to perception from a finite number of actualized objects. An actualized object in a finite set is a representation of the possible expressions which other actualized objects in the finite set are capable of perceiving. A finite set establishes a subset of boundaries existing in the pre-established harmony. The boundaries of a finite set are dependent on the phenomenal representations of the actualized objects which composes the set. The outer boundary of a finite set is shared as inner boundaries among the finite number of actualized objects in the set. Spatial and temporal sets. A set can exist in a spatial or temporal dimension, but it is not possible for a set to exist in both the spatial and temporal dimension. The spatial dimension is constituted by multiple actualized objects. A single actualized object in the spatial dimension is delineated by its position relative to other actualized objects. A spatial set of actualized objects is constituted by multiple actualized objects, which are positioned and delineated among each other. An infinite spatial set includes the boundaries between all actualized objects at a given time. A finite spatial set is constituted by the boundaries that exist among a finite number of objects at a given time. The temporal dimension is constituted by multiple representations of a single actualized object. A single actualized object in the temporal dimension is delineated by its position relative to other representations of itself. A temporal set of actualized objects is constituted by multiple representations of an actualized object, which are positioned and delineated among other representations of themselves. An infinite temporal set includes the boundaries between all possible representations of an actualized object over time. A finite temporal set includes the boundaries between a finite number of representations of an actualized object over time.